the king of Las Vegas. To understand the Wynn Resorts, we're going to have to learn a little bit about Steve Wynn first. Born as Steen Weinberg in 1942, his family changed his name when he was about 4 years old to be Wynn, because they wanted to avoid anti-Semitism in the U.S. Now, Steve Wynn's personal life is riddled with scandal and, a bunch of other stuff that you can probably read about in tabloids. That is not the focus of today. Whoever the man is not relevant. Today we're going to be talking about just his career and the life that he's lived. And it has been, so far, a very impressive one professionally. So to start, let's talk about Wynn's career. In 1967, Steve Wynn and his family moved to Las Vegas, and he purchased a small stake in the Frontier Casino. 4 years later, Steve Wynn bought a controlling interest in the Golden Nugget. This was the first main casino that he eventually went on to be a majority shareholder and had complete control over. Importantly, Frank Sinatra was a common or periodic headliner at the Golden Nugget at the time. And through their association, Frank Sinatra and Steve Wynn got to know each other. The Golden Nugget was the very beginning of Steve Wynn's 40-plus year career in the gaming industry. After the Golden Nugget, Steve Wynn went on to build the Mirage and Treasure Island, both on the Las Vegas Strip. It was his first casino ever, first of many to be on the Las Vegas Strip. After those two, he went on to build the Bellagio, which is catered to more premium mass market or premium VIPs, and it was the first of its kind to do so. The Bellagio inspired places like the Venetian and Mandalay Bay and Paris, Las Vegas, and all these other more opulent casinos and hotels. So in no small part, Steve Wynn was very, very influential in making Las Vegas what it is known as today. So after selling the Mirage and Treasure Island and Bellagio all to MGM, Steve Wynn went on to form the Wynn Resorts, which is the meat of this video, which I will be getting into now. So today there are 6 properties that the Wynn Resorts currently owns. There are the Wynn Las Vegas, the Wynn Macau, the Encore Las Vegas, the Encore Macau, the Encore Boston Harbor, and the Wynn Palace, which is located in Macau. Take a minute right here just to note that Las Vegas isn't really the gambling capital of the world, as a lot of maybe Americans might think. It is considered the entertainment capital of the world. But if you want the gambling capital of the world, where people really go for super high stakes, that can be found in Vegas, but you're going to be wanting to go to Macau. So we'll start with the external analysis. I'll give a brief past overview. Starting with politics, in Nevada, the gambling industry makes up 35% of tax revenue for the general budget. So that means the government in Nevada and the gambling industry are codependent. If one succeeds, the other succeeds. In Macau, the government grants 3 what are called concessions. A concession is an agreement between the government and a company to allow games of chance or gambling in a certain region. So they have distributed only 3 different concession agreements, and Wynn owns one of them. Notably, no company owns land in Macau or in China. The government does. All they can do is lease the land, which is part of the concession agreement. And what I found in my research that was actually astounding to me was these agreements need to be renewed. Otherwise, when they expire, there's something called the redemption clause, or the redemption right, which means that the government, at the end of the agreement, if it's not renewed or extended or anything, can seize control of all casino operations and all casino assets that are in Macau. So basically, if there is no renewal, which there isn't one yet, then the government can take control of everything that Wynn Resorts has in Macau. And that's just crazy to me. The concession expires on June 26, 2022. And if it's not renewed or extended, that is big, big trouble for Wynn Resorts for obvious reasons. There will be no more revenue. There will be no more anything unless they can change this. So the goal here would be to hopefully get that renewed. And they're in a strong position to do so, but nothing is guaranteed. And that, if you can find that in the annual report, which is just a crazy risk to read about. The economic situation, Wynn has over 27,000 employees worldwide. Their main economic restraint would be the Chinese yuan, the currency in China, has currency exchange restrictions and their like export controls and things like that. And so any changes that the Chinese government wants to do with those may negatively affect Wynn. There are also limited labor pools because of imported labor restrictions in Macau. For socio-cultural, of course, COVID-19 has had a huge impact on the gaming and entertainment and travel industry and everything. The thing about the gaming industry is that it's heavily reliant on tourism. They need new people just to not be afraid to go somewhere. So any kind of mass spread pandemic like we're experiencing will negatively affect the company, as happened in the last year. Also, other things such as terrorist threats. In October of 2017, there was a shooting in Las Vegas. And obviously that's a very unfortunate and scary and terrible thing that happened. And that would lead consumers to be a little wary of visiting Las Vegas, especially at a time like that, unless there is some kind of security. But, if people are scared, that affects travel, that affects business. Part of the norm in Macau for these casino businesses is a high dependence on gaming promoters. They need certain people to be promoting their stuff at all times, and there's competition for that. Everyone is competing to have more promoters or better promoters on their team. So that's another social cultural thing to be wary of for them. For ecological, every hotel and casino is subjected to restrictions and regulations within the environment and how they conduct themselves and how they conduct their place of business. Also, specifically in Macau, they're subject to typhoons and extreme weather, which could affect business. So for legal, along with COVID-19, there were massive shutdowns. Legally, they could not operate, and businesses were shut down across the country when that happened. So that greatly affected last year's revenue and to an extent this year's revenue. There's also a space for online gambling that Wynn has not explored, and as far as we see, there's no plans to explore online gaming. It's not on the table right now, but it is something that's becoming more legalized in more and more states and could be a threat as a substitute, which it's hard to substitute the experience of going to a casino with something online, but if someone's just trying to get a gambling fix in or something like that, it's something else that's out there that's being legalized more and more. And of course, other states legalizing gambling will create more competition, either regionally or nationally. Another important thing is that certain laws and regulations in Nevada actually apply outside of Nevada. So if a Macau establishment was found to be cheating or doing something that's against regulations in Nevada, there might be reprimands and repercussions, even though it didn't occur in the actual state. So there's 4 quadrants that I'm putting these into for the strategic groups. There is the luxury, and there is the affordable, as well as there is one or few big locations with gambling, and then there's many small locations without gambling. I'll put an example of a company for each quadrant in the screen, but specifically the one that the Wynn falls into is luxury, single location or large locations with gambling. Now let's move on to an internal analysis. The most important assets that the Wynn has is the customers, the employees, and the environment. The way that those 3 things interact with each other in any way must be strengthened by every move that the company makes. And this is reflected in their growth strategy, which I'll start to get into. Something else to know going into this is that the Wynn, unlike other casinos and hotels on the Strip, is almost fully integrated when it comes to the experience. Every restaurant, every strip club, every bar that you see in a Wynn resort is owned by Wynn. This is very different from competitors who usually do licensing operations. That's not what Wynn is about. Wynn wants to own all of this because, like I said before, if they control the environment, they control the experience of gaming, they control the atmosphere in the restaurant, they control everything. They can dictate the experience, and this is incredibly important to their marketing and growth strategy. So now let's move on to the corporate strategy. There's 2 things to focus on. 1 is location, and 2 is customer loyalty. More traditionally, casinos would focus on location. If you have a good spot, people will come to you regardless. This was the case for Wynn and the Golden Nugget. The second one, and more important one now, is customer loyalty. Customer loyalty is important because any casino can offer you, a $5 bet on blackjack. One way that casinos try to differ from each other is by using different rewards programs with the player card. I can actually show you here. This is not from a major casino, but it goes to show every major casino, MGM, Caesars, Wynn, they all have player cards. This here is called a red card. This is what the Wynn uses. This is actually what they would distribute to you if you wanted to become a member there. These cards can give you different promos, and if you stay there more often, you can get more free rooms and things like that. So while seen as basically a necessity in this industry, it is not the thing that Wynn relies on. Far from it, actually. The Wynn has the highest, I don't know if you want to call it a retention rate, but the highest amount of people coming back to stay with them as opposed to any other big player on the strip. Everything about the Wynn is made to make you feel like what you see in the movies or in the marketing. When people go to Las Vegas, they have a certain expectation, a certain preconceived notion of what Vegas is and who goes there, and people are ready to be that. And so Steve Wynn, when he made his company, knew that and wanted to cater to it. He relied on his experience to build and craft these extravagant things to do in Vegas. For example, the Bellagio water fountain that we talked about earlier, that was his idea. You're not going to find anywhere in a marketing plan that says, put in a big fountain. Like, it's just something that he came up with based on experience, which is very different from other casinos in the sense that a lot of them today rely on big data. When you walk into a casino, you see like trees that you would see in a jungle in a safari because it's like a new adventure. It's not just that. Early on, he created a advertisement with Frank Sinatra, where instead of focusing on these luxuries, he focused on the employees. There was a waiter or a doorman or other employees from around the property that were featured with Frank Sinatra, with Frank being like, hello, Bob, or to a doorman or to a local professor, not really, but or something like that. People associated Frank Sinatra with luxury, with lavish, and so that was already assumed. Now when people go to the Wynn Resort after seeing that ad, they think, oh, I'm going to meet these really caring employees, they're cool with Frank Sinatra. As an employee on the same time, remember, they're also an asset. The employee sees this ad and is like, wow, I'm being featured, I'm being valued, and everyone's looking at me in this positive light. It makes you proud to work there. So not only are you getting customer loyalty, you're getting employee loyalty. And again, both in Macau and Las Vegas, it can be hard to come by extremely good employees because a lot of them work for minimum wage or tips or something like that. So finding someone who wants to work with you is incredibly important. So you're not competing on pay, usually you're competing on loyalty when it comes to hiring the people you want. And the better your people are, the better the experience is, the more revenue you get, and then it goes from there. But now to get into a little bit more of a concrete growth strategy section. It would seem that Wynn's strategy is to build a loyal customer base and expand rapidly. Rapidly being every couple years you're hoping to formulate a new location. And so far this has been working. They have plans to expand in Macau and reopen. They've already reopened here in the Boston Harbor. And in the time during COVID where they've had a lot of lost business, they've taken the time to renovate and fix up a little bit older locations nowadays, like the Encore and the Wynn in Las Vegas. To wrap up, I'm going to talk a little bit about their strategic issues and just looking forward. So since 2014, VIPs, or whales as we'd call them in the US, players who play on credit and have a lot of money, have been on the decline at about a rate of 21-ish%. Wynn has taken notice of this, and they have modified their strategy to cater more towards the higher end, or the premium mass market. So to cater to this, the expansion that I said they're having in Macau, that I mentioned earlier, is going to be 2 buildings with 600 hotel rooms each. And of course, this is to meet that demand for all these new players that they plan on bringing in. So that's all I got today. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me ramble about this. I hope if you're watching this, you have a great rest of your day, rest of your semester, and have learned a little bit more about Las Vegas and the Wynn resorts.